Hey there humans, Bob here, and today I'm here to give you my early access review of Gotham Knights. Don't forget to like and subscribe as we roll that intro. Now, before we get started, I want to say a big thank you to WB Games for providing me with early access to the game so I could check it out and give you my thoughts on it. The way I usually do reviews is I split it all out into sections and give my thoughts on each of them before giving an overall breakdown. Those sections are story, combat, traversal, activities, cosmetics, systems, and world. Before I go into the detail though, I think it's important to mention that I've spent around 20 hours in the game so far, so my thoughts are based around that. Personally, I think that's enough to be able to give a decent idea of the experience that Gotham Knights has to offer. The majority of my time was spent as Batgirl, and I spent as much time in co-op as I possibly could, with my teammate playing as Red Hood. To give you a gauge on performance, I played at 3440 by 1440 using DLSS set to performance, aiming for 60 frames per second with a mix of medium to high graphics and ray tracing off. My PC has an Intel i9-10900K and an Nvidia RTX 3070 Founders Edition. For full specs though, check out the link in the description below. Now all the techie bits are out of the way, let's dive into the story. And I've got to say, this is possibly one of the best bits of the game for me so far. You are thrown into the story immediately with an incredible opening sequence, which I won't spoil, but the game doesn't dawdle when it comes to getting you right into the thick of it. It's fast-paced, action-filled, and emotionally charged. There's no need for mountains of exposition. The Batman is dead, and you need to find out how, and more importantly, why it happened. You're able to make your choice between which knight you play each mission with, and rather than just generic dialogue, each encounter with the rogues gallery of supervillains has banter and witty retorts based on who you are playing as, making replayability much more interesting for players. There's also a ton of extra information for those who are interested, all available in the database and the email system that exists within the game that furthers and expands the story, as well as featuring some cool little Easter eggs like mentions from other DC characters outside of Gotham. I won't delve too much into the detail of the story itself, but each character feels alive and motivated by the mission in their own way. And over time, they learn to work together and play off of their own strengths, rather than butting heads like they do at the start. I'm genuinely excited to see how the whole thing plays out. A big tick on story for me. On to combat now, and I've got to say, although I was initially concerned about combat, it's one of the most fun elements of the game, especially in co-op. Takedowns shine as one of the coolest actions in combat. There's a lot of variety to them, and they're often brutal too. Co-op is where it truly shines though, simply based on the fact that you can patrol the city as a true crime-fighting duo, coordinating your attacks, be it stealthy or as loud as the original costumes. I can easily remember quite a few times where both me and my co-op partner were fighting through a group of tough enemies, and our excitement peaking when we managed to pull off just the right combos to tear through the enemies with style and ease. The best moments in my gameplay were easily centered around this. Sadly though, it's not all sunshine and rainbows for co-op combat. There were quite a few occasions when me and my co-op partner were separated and both of our experiences were impacted due to severe drops in frame rate. On occasion, we experienced drops from about 60 to 20 FPS as the game seemed to be trying to render both of our fights in completely different parts of the map at the same time, which in my opinion is pretty unnecessary. Personally, I'm of the opinion that if you're going to play co-op, you want to play together. Whilst untethered co-op can be really cool and can speed up some elements like when you go out on patrol, the detriment to performance, at least on PC, became too much for me and my co-op partner and severely impacted our enjoyment of the game. Now, a solution to this was to try and stick together, but unfortunately at times, depending on where we were in the world and how many enemies were on screen, even when in close proximity to each other, our performance was still impacted. Now, generally this is something that you experience in video games. The more elements that are on the screen at one time, the higher the drain on your system. But with all due respect, I don't believe with the amount of enemies that were on screen, our experience should have been impacted in any significant way. That said, when everything was running smoothly, combat is easily one of the most enjoyable things about the game, and each time I stopped playing, I just wanted to get back in there and beat up some more bad guys. Big old tick for combat from me. On to Traversal now, and let's talk about how your characters get about the city and how they move within the environment. Now, I don't know about you, but Traversal in video games is really important to me. One of my favourite superhero games, Spider-Man, absolutely nails the experience of being the wall crawler. Even going all the way back a decade ago to a previous Batman game, Arkham City, Traversal was key to fulfilling that superhero fantasy. In Gotham Knights though, sadly, it falls a little short. There were so many times I found myself walking into walls and getting stuck on elements that frankly I don't think I should be getting stuck on in a game that's releasing in 2022. In addition to that, whilst the grappling hook is a great addition when it works well, a lot of the time you'll find yourself zipping to a completely different location than you intended to, which not only affects how your encounters play out, but also breaks the flow of the combat and pulls you out of the game in terms of immersion. Coupled with the performance issues that we talked about earlier, Traversal can also be affected by the occasional input lag, and in some situations where you do get stuck after accidentally walking towards a wall, the couple of seconds that you needed to hide or respond to an attack are spent on trying to get clear of this inanimate state. On top of all of this, when I was trying to drop down to ledges or trying to mantle over waist-high walls, the movement can be so janky that if you are trying to perform any action that requires stealth, like many of the missions in the game, you may end up running headfirst into an enemy, again breaking the immersion and ruining the flow of the game. I don't want to just mention the things I didn't enjoy though. I really enjoyed Batgirl's heroic traversal, maybe because it gave me a little bit of a hint of what flying around this version of Gotham would feel like as Batman. Sadly though, overall, from me, it's a thumbs down on Traversal. Onto activities now, and let's talk about the things that you can do in the game. Outside of the story missions and the side missions, one of the biggest things that you can do in the game is patrolling Gotham. The criminal factions have realised the Batman is gone and are running rampant across the city. As your selected knight, you can roam the city stopping crime and keeping citizens safe. Whilst doing this, you can also interrogate certain enemies to discover premeditated crimes that are scheduled to happen across the map, which provides a variety of challenges at a variety of difficulties. You can bring criminals out of hiding, stop robberies, and investigate murder scenes to help clean up Gotham and both progress the story and your characters. Crime scene investigations are great as they break up some of the monotony of the fighting, but I'll be completely honest, even though some of the patrols can get quite repetitive, I found myself immersed in the experience of patrolling Gotham with very little encouragement from the game itself. It gave me the opportunity to do so, and I just dived in. As well as patrolling, as you go through the city, there are a variety of other activities to keep you occupied, like racing on the Batcycle, finding collectible batarangs, and spotting graffiti murals for Robin's college projects. Yeah, that's a thing. While I think that the more I play the game, the more these activities may start to become a bit more repetitive, so far I'm really enjoying that experience. Big tick on activities for me. Let's talk about cosmetics now, and probably the most surprising element of the game for me. Whilst I'm probably going to talk about this more later in the review when we come to systems, I was super surprised about how the cosmetics work. There are 15 base suits, each with a ton of different colorways, and each suit has 3 separate variations on each element of the suit. With this system, you can create your own unique knight that really stands out in co-op gameplay. I originally understood that you could recolor your suits, but this added layer is so cool and was such a surprise when I managed to make it to the Belfry. As well as the suits, there's a whole system to be able to customize the Batcycle too. Although I haven't unlocked a lot on it, that's another really cool feature to see. I haven't managed to unlock a great deal of cosmetics at this point, but what I've unlocked so far I either love the look of as it comes, or I'm able to create a variation of it that I do. Huge tick on cosmetics for me. Let's discuss systems now and go over how everything works when you start diving into the menus. When it comes to the menus, I'm not going to talk about the UI. I actually covered that in a previous video, so if you want to check that out, the link is in the description down below. But I do want to address the experience that I've had on PC, as it simply does not feel like it's been designed or adapted in any way for keyboard and mouse users. Now, I'm not going to rag on this experience too much, but there are a lot of elements that simply cannot be interacted with when using a mouse, or use very strange keybinds that frankly feel like they're trying to put a square in a triangle hole. Outside of that though, there are also some interesting quirks with the systems within the game. Gear works off of a loot-based system where most of the rewards are gained by completing objectives whilst on patrol or opening chests during missions. The gear that you gain from each of these encounters scales along with your level and has different perks and abilities like elemental effects that you can apply when hitting enemies, which helps you to become a more effective fighter. The suits that you find also unlock the ability to transmog those suits onto the equipped suits in your inventory. This seems like a really cool feature, but doesn't actually account for the really cool customization that we discussed earlier, or the colorways that you can apply when the suit you want to customize is equipped. This honestly takes out some of the best features in the customization. Hopefully we'll see that added to the transmog system in the future. On top of being able to get gear from encounters and chests, you can also craft your own suits and weaponry using salvage that you also gain from encounters. Whilst this would be cool to keep you equipped with the best possible gear, weirdly, you don't actually get the gear that you craft unless you're at the Belfry, which is a bit confusing as your enemies scale to your hero level and not your gear level. So you could be out on patrol without the ability to level your gear until you end that patrol. Speaking of leveling, when it comes to all the skills that you can unlock with each character, you'll be able to unlock the full skill tree with no compromises, although you might have to play through a couple of times to fill it all out. Now I'm not going to lie, I was expecting a little bit more depth when it came to skills, as in the ability to create unique skill builds, but it seems like a lot of that is going to be coming mainly from gear instead. That said, for more casual players, this system is going to be pretty easy to grasp, and for all players, pretty easy to complete. Generally though, the gear system is actually a lot of fun. Whilst not overly complex, it does give you a nice feeling of progression and adds meaning to completing activities during patrols. You have 3 slots per character, suit, melee and ranged, and each of these slots you can either pick up gear for or craft it yourself. The idea here is to each time you level up, you get access to more powerful gear. On top of this, when completing activities, you'll also be rewarded with mods. Mods can be used to apply bonuses to your gear, like increased health, improved elemental effects, and enhance your ability to deal critical attacks. Again, it's not overly complex, but it's a fun little extra layer to be able to customize your builds. Finally now, let's talk about the world. Now, there's been a lot of comparisons drawn to the previous Arkham games, and I feel the most valid ones there are to do with the art style. Gotham in my mind is a living, breathing monument to Gothic art style and architecture. This version of Gotham, however, just doesn't really hit those same notes. I'm not saying I don't like it, I actually really enjoy the extra colour and vibrancy in the world, but it doesn't feel like the Gotham that I know. Now I know that's a little bit unfair simply because my idea of Gotham likely comes from the movies or the previous games. But I think, like me, a lot of folks are going to really struggle to separate those previous ideas of Gotham out of their own heads. As well as the art style, whilst I've enjoyed the patrols quite a lot, the world itself does feel quite empty in comparison to other open worlds we've seen in the past. And I think since this game is locked to current gen consoles or requires a pretty powerful PC to run well, the world doesn't feel nearly as dense as it could. I actually even found something that worries me a little bit more about the density of the world in the graphics menu. Right at the bottom of the quality tab, there is an option called environment density. This option is toggleable, at least on PC, and allows you to control how many pedestrians and vehicles that can be spawned simultaneously. Now I don't know how it shows on consoles, but essentially how Gotham feels as a world to exist in is going to depend on whether you have a pretty expensive PC or a really expensive PC, which personally I find a little concerning, as when I'm playing on medium to high settings, the world feels a little lonely, even if it is mainly set at night. Either way, the map is huge and there's a lot of fun elements in it. The exteriors are varied enough so you feel like you're in different parts of the city, and the interiors can provide a great switch up in the environment that also push you to switch up your tactics. All in all, I'm a little on the fence with how the world feels, so rather than give this a tick or a cross, I'm going to give it a neutral score. So, overall, whilst I'm enjoying key elements of the game like the combat and the story, many elements of the game are falling a little short of what I'd expect from a next-gen locked experience. This game is by no means bad. In fact, I'm having a lot of fun, but it's also not the superhero fantasy fulfillment I was hoping for or that I'm used to with games set in Gotham. That said, the combat and the story are probably the most important elements of a game like this, and I'm hoping as more time goes on, these elements shine through even stronger. If you're still on the fence about Gotham Knights, then maybe check out some of your favourite streamers playing the game to get a bit more of a gauge of your thoughts on it, especially if that's me, as I'll also be streaming Gotham Knights on this channel. But if you're already sold and your pre-order's already in, I honestly think you're going to have some real fun with this one. Just do me a favour though, and don't expect the Mona Lisa of video games. Enjoy Gotham Knights for what it is. A great narrative filled with some great characters and some really enjoyable co-op combat. Also, if you're looking for some more Gotham Knights content, don't forget to check out the rest of the videos on the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, stay safe, stay awesome, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.